Dave Texaris. I'm here with my twin brother Rob, and we have a very special guest with us, the man who needs no introduction in Seaford, Mr. Steve Bongiovi.
The legendary
Mr. Steve Bongiovi. So thank you so much for being with us. When I think of people in Seaford who had a great influence over a long period of time, somebody who has had such a positive impact on Seaford schools and the Seaford community, and is known by so many, admired and respected by so many. I think of Mr. Steve Bongiovi. So tonight we want to...
Okay, interview over. Let's go.
Sounds
Let's
good, right?
end it right there.
There it is. So we just want to hear your story a little bit. I think you have so much history in Seaford, and I think a lot of people like to know.
Your story needs to be out there, so we want to get it out there.
Kind of take a walk down memory lane a little bit.
Absolutely.
Talk about some of the ways you're involved in Seaford. You've received many awards. We'll touch on some of those.
And by the way, just backtrack that. I had Mr. Bongiovi as a freshman and a senior, so I had you 2 times, and I think you did also.
I did also, so we were very fortunate to have them.
In at least one of those circumstances, you were in the same class.
Yes, that's
we
true.
were one time.
They tried to separate us most of the time, but we were in the same class. And
I think that for my own benefit, I had to put Dave in like the second row.
Yeah.
And Rob in like the 6th row, just for...
I'm sure.
I will say, I always look forward to your classes, that I remember. They were the best.
Yes.
Thank you.
Why don't we start off with where did you grow up, and what high school did you go to? What were you involved in when you were in high school?
Sure. I grew up in Seaford. My family moved here when I was 2. We grew up on Saddle Path, a lot of famous Seaford names.
Yes,
Saddle
I know
Path,
some people
just
did there.
on the other side of what was the Seaford Avenue School.
Okay.
I attended kindergarten at Seaford Avenue School. All 8 grades were in St. William's. I went to St. William the Abbot School. And but because of the friends on the block, I maintained contact with the public school friends and age peers. I attended Regis High School in Manhattan. For 4 years.
I did not know that.
A lot of people think I'm a Seaford High School grad.
Yes, I think...
I'm not.
I actually knew that because I heard it somewhere, but I was always... Before I heard that, I thought you went to Seaford, and I think a lot of people do also think that.
I commuted from the Wantor train station 4 years. I mean, it's hard to imagine in this day and age a 14-year-old getting on the train and somehow finding his way from Penn Station up into the east side of Manhattan.
Times have changed, for sure.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Were you involved in, because you're so knowledgeable of sports, were you involved in any sports when you were growing up or in high school?
I was always on the intramural council. I was not a terrific athlete personally. I was on the cross country and track team for 2 years at Regis High School. My favorite sport to participate in was basketball. Wasn't good enough to be on the basketball team, but because of CYO and other local opportunities and having to commute from the city, I couldn't run track in Manhattan and then come out and play CYO basketball. So I gave up the track so I could continue to play basketball. And as I said, being on the intramural council, I was involved in a lot of other sports, semi-administrative.
All right.
And so from there, what college did you go to from there?
I attended Lemoyne College in Syracuse. I was very fortunate in that 14 classmates from my high school went to that college. So breaking in, there was no real problem with transition.
Okay.
I was
off
and running there. I participated in basketball intramurals there. I was actually also a official for the touch football league, and myself and my friend Gerard were kind of the 2 lead officials who got all the big games in the intramural tournament, and that was a good outlet for me and for my, tendency to perform, shall we say.
What did you study at in college?
I was an English major.
Okay, so
And an
you knew you always wanted to be an English teacher?
I knew I wanted to be a teacher from, I think, freshman year in high school. And I knew it was probably going to be English. I have to admit, and it's okay for public disclosure, that I'm terrible in science. I failed every science course I ever had.
We don't think any less of you. That's all right.
we had to take Latin for 4 years. So, I mean, I did okay with that. Languages, not too bad. But, yes, it was going to be English all the way through, and it became my major in college.
Okay. Did you get a teaching job right out of college, and was Seaford the first place?
I actually had two
Okay.
teaching jobs when I graduated.
Okay.
Now, my wife Judy and I married before my senior year. Not that we had to; we just wanted to.
You don't see that too often anymore either.
She was a licensed and trained radiologic technologist, an X-ray tech.
Okay.
So she could work, and there are plenty of good hospitals in Syracuse for her to be employed at. She worked at St. Joseph's, as it turns out.
Okay.
So that supported the struggling newlyweds
Yes.
up in Syracuse. But we, at the end of that year, I got hired by the local all-boys Catholic school, Christian Brothers Academy.
All right.
Now, Regis High School is an all-boys school, so I'm sure that had some influence on, that I would knew the territory.
Okay.
And I got hired very early, maybe May. Graduation was in May. But I had also interviewed at Seaford and was still in the running, and I kept trying to hold off Christian Brothers Academy and holding them off until I could say definitively whether Seaford had hired me or not. There is a interesting interview story at Seaford High School.
I'd love to hear it.
I was in the assistant principal's office, Mr. Skolnick, at the time. Some of our older viewers might remember that name.
I think I've heard the name.
Yeah.
And he was interviewing me for an upcoming English position. And the other assistant principal at the time, Mr. Howard, interrupted the interview to say, John Harrington, an English teacher, is not feeling well. I'm going to cover his class. He's going to the nurse's office. He came in, the interview continued. He came in 5 minutes later. John Harrington collapsed in the nurse's office. We're calling an ambulance.
Okay.
So I said, well, I can leave if there's no, and Mr. Skolnick insisted, no, we'll finish. 5 minutes later, Mr. Howard came in. John Harrington died in the nurse's office.
Wow.
So, and Mr. Skolnick, who was a consummate professional and had a very dry humor, but he wasn't meaning to be humorous, but it was the best example of black humor I've ever heard. He said, well, when you came to interview, there was one opening, and now there's two.
Wow. I don't mean to make light of it, but that is a crazy story.
Yes,
yes.
Okay.
And it turns out, so I was hired, same year, the second English job, went to a Seaford High School graduate, Aileen Lepkin, who became Aileen Daly, and a career-long English and then guidance counselor.
So what year was that?
That was 1972.
Okay. And you didn't have to go through any of the substitute teaching, leave
No,
replacement route?
Well, somebody died and they had an opening. Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
No, I was very lucky that I had a job right from the beginning. I mean, I had the usual growing pains early on in my career, but hung in there and got supported by the staff. And
if I'm putting the pieces right together, you said you were living in Syracuse when you first got married, right? And so
Yes.
did you move back to Seaford at
but
that point?
upon being able to declare in August that I got the job in Seaford, leaving Christian Brothers high and dry, we moved to back to Long Island. Judy comes from Massapequa, so we stayed with her family. But just for a short time, we got an apartment in Rockville Center. Lived there for a couple of years. Judy's father is a physician, and he had an office attached to his house. But he moved to a professional building, and we converted that office to an apartment, and that's where we lived until we bought our house on Brooklyn Avenue, where we still are.
All right, and had a long career at Seaford, many titles. Besides English teacher, you're a department chair, you're a student council advisor,
the shave commissioner.
Commissioner, which we'll get to in a little bit. We'll talk about that for sure.
Right.
The voice of Seaford always.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite memories of your time teaching at Seaford High School?
Well, I mean, it was always the students. I always advised, because I had the opportunity as a chair to talk to people and interview people, and has had an opportunity later in life, later in my career as an honored teacher, to address educators. My primary and first advice was, don't tell me you love your subject. Tell me you love your kids, and then we'll, kind of work it from there. But I can find lots of people to hire who love reading, but they have to love kids more than that. So certainly the kids, I had, magnificent relationships on the staff, some of which still exist today. Just being involved with the kids. Shave was great. Student council, I was so lucky to be around, some of the finest kids in the school every year, and, work with them in a different way than I got to work with other kids.
What I always find amazing is that how many of these former students that you still keep in contact with today. I've had the pleasure of doing some football games aside Mr. Bongiovi, and the whole game people, former students are coming up too, and you remember everybody from years ago, and you still keep in touch with them, so that just shows you how much of an impact you must have had in their lives.
Thank you. Yes, I've been very lucky, and living here.
Yes.
So seeing, I might see a former student and current coach run by my house every now and again.
It's part of my route.
Just so happens.
My route that my hot chocolate run route there. So for sure.
Speaking of the hot chocolate run, I'll see you there.
Yes.
Well, we actually do a tournament on that day, so I never get to run it. So I run it every year, but except all timers around the year, except for the actual day.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about announcing.
Sure.
When did you get involved in announcing? And when was the first time that you announced, and maybe some of your favorite, most memorable Seaford games that you've announced?
Okay.
I know you've done so many, so it's probably hard to narrow them down.
Well, it started really pretty simply. The Seaford did have a long-time announcer.
Okay.
He was a member of the Board of Education. His name was Ray Mulphy.
I did not know that. Okay.
And because he was good, he was very good. Had a very deep, rich voice. He also started to get noticed by other schools, and he was also doing Long Island Lutheran sports, football, the same time he'd be doing Seaford. And just one game came up. I was just assigned as a supervisor. We used to have supervisors, and they just supposedly crowd control.
Yes.
And Ray Mulphy's not coming. Would you like to announce? Okay, give it a try. And that was in 1977.
Wow.
So this is my 47th or so year announcing for Seaford. And I started with Section 8, Nassau County, in 1999. That was kind of a Seaford-related story also.
Okay.
Just this past homecoming, we honored the championship team of 1998.
Yes.
Well, their championship football game at Hofstra, I was Seaford spotter. And while I was there, it was announced that this is the last game being announced by this particular Section 8 employee. I went to my principal at the time, someone you may know, Mr. Ray Buckley.
Know him very well.
And I said, this happened. Who would I have to contact to, kind of express an interest? And he, as we know, he has so many great contacts. He reached out to Pat Pizzarelli, who was at the time the football coordinator for Section 8. Now he's the executive director of Section 8. But it was decided that the Empire State Games were coming to Long Island that year. And they would give me a tryout announcing the lacrosse portion of the competition. There was another announcer, Hofstra's announcer for college lacrosse, was also part of the team. So basically I had to pass muster with him. Mr. Norm Murray was his name. His daughter Kate is currently the town of Hempstead town clerk.
Yes, I see signs all over the place.
Yeah, and so however it worked out, I passed muster and slowly worked my way from lacrosse and into football, which is where the opening was, basketball, and now I'm basically the primary announcer for all three of those for the playoffs.
That's crazy. Now, you do all sports at Seaford. I've heard you on all sports. I don't think I've ever watched a football game that you haven't announced. Maybe you've missed one or two in your days, but I don't remember that. And you've certainly done, I'm pretty sure, every sport almost. Is there any favorite memories you have from your time?
How about a favorite game or?
I mean, as you said, there are so many.
Yes.
I mean, I track what I do only because I have to submit records for tax purposes at the end of the year, what I've announced or what I got paid for announcing and that sort of thing at all the different venues that I go to. So I do track what I do, and I do anywhere from 150 to 200 games a year when you consider all the sports and all the places. So to narrow some of that, but there are some magnificent ones and certainly some magnificent players.
I'm sure you've seen some pretty cool stuff.
Well, I mean, we had that great playoff game around 15 or 16 where West Hempstead kind of punted the ball away and couldn't, and they flubbed the punt, and we came from way back, and Johnny Allen caught a end of the game touchdown in a mob, and I mean that was very exciting. I've seen Wally Serbiak, who's now the Knicks announcer. Tobias Harris, who's now with the 76ers. As far as Seaford game goes, I've seen girls soccer shootouts. I saw the beginning of girls lacrosse at Seaford. It's been magnificent.
And some Garbino nights.
I've seen plenty of Garbino nights and plenty of wonderful people at those. I mean, Seaford coaching staff, Seaford athletic department, Seaford administration really do a great job of supporting the athletic program at Seaford.
So you announced for Seaford and Section 8, but I don't know if a lot of people know this also, but you do college sporting events as well.
I do.
Which college sports teams do you announce for?
I'm the announcer for Nassau Community Football and Nassau Community Men's Lacrosse. And I'm the basketball announcer, men's and women, for Farmingdale State College. The athletic director there for a long time is a Seaford guy and a longtime friend of mine, my own age group, Mike Harrington Sr. So he brought me in there, and I've been doing that for probably 25 years or so.
Yeah, so while you stayed busy,
yes,
say you do that many games a year. That's where it comes from.
I didn't realize there's that many that you announced for. That's pretty cool.
One of the things that's always someone watching you is that you are always so prepared for every game. You have the officials, the right pronunciation of everyone's name, the program. You know the rules of each of the sports, and it's just always the professionalism that you do it, and that's why I imagine you're so desired to have announced for any collegiate or Section 8 games.
As coaches, I know Mr. Bongiovi always comes up to us, always asks us, he has a set questions that he goes through and make sure he knows all the coaches and their names, any alumni that played in sports in college, and always up to date on everything that's going on in the sport, always well prepared, even in sports that you're not totally comfortable in, like the sport of wrestling. And so that always amazed me that you do such a great job in a sport that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone.
Well, I mean, you guys have made it comfortable, more comfortable for me. I will admit that with wrestling, I can watch the match and it looks like nothing's happening, and I see the referee go, points. Or it seems like a lot is happening, but no points get scored. So that part, I'm not exactly sure I go. So that's why I don't do any in-action announcing for wrestling. I just wait for the end of the period to say something. But I think as far as announcing goes, it's like anything any of us do. It has nothing to do with me as a good announcer. You need to be prepared and do a good job at whatever you're going to do. I mean,
absolutely.
We as teachers, how much preparation do we do? That's where it starts.
Correct.
For me, I did preparation of lessons for so many years, and ultimately kind of created my template for each sport so that I know what needs to be highlighted and that sort of thing. And so far it's working. I mean, it worked well enough to get me honors that I never would have anticipated.
Yes, for sure. I think we talked about some athletes that stand out to you. You mentioned some with Wally Serbiak and Tobias Harris. Are there any, you witnessed a lot of Seaford sporting events over the past 40 years, any Seaford athletes that always particularly stood out to you?
I could name lots of names.
Yes. Yeah.
And still leave somebody out.
Yes, so it's always a danger.
But I can say, for those who are history buffs of Seaford sports, that I've announced Sean Nolan, who went on to a Major League Baseball career with the Washington Nationals, among others. James O'Hagan, who played with the USFL
and the Giants,
in training camp. Yeah. A former Seaford quarterback who became a tight end at Lehigh, went on to Adam Bergen for the Cardinals. Yeah. Going way back, this is not something that gets announced so very often, but Frank Romano, who's I think a contemporary of Sal's, played in the NFL during the strike. Was he a scab or did he just play football? I don't know.
He played football.
He played professional football in the NFL.
Which is more than many have done. So
I think that the Seaford lacrosse programs have been outstanding, both men and women. I don't know that we have had historically as many college athletes on any other sport as we do play. I don't know what their professional opportunities are, but so many have played college lacrosse, both men and women, and done very well.
Yeah, interesting. So, switching gears a little bit, I touched on before, shave commissioner. I can remember coming up to high school, and I had an older brother, and I would see yearbooks of people, and they would write the activities they're involved in. I always saw it said shave 1 through 4, meaning they did it freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, and everyone had and I was like, what is shave? Like, what is this? So, you are the shave commissioner. Can you tell us what does even shave stand for? What is it? How did it come about? And how did it become so popular at Seaford?
It started out real simple. There was an afternoon recreation program. It was in effect the open gym for volleyball. And I was in charge of it, and Mr. Dave Sheehan was in charge of it.
Yes.
And we just shared, basically our responsibilities were to be there, make sure nobody got hurt, that sort of thing. Well, we started just the two of us kind of on our own, managing or coaching or picking a team. And one team would play the other for each of the sessions. And we kind of slowly expanded on that to, I think there was 4 teams the second year. And ultimately, it became the Seaford High Associated Volleyball Enterprises.
Okay.
That's what it stands for.
I knew there was Seaford High in volleyball in there. I didn't know what the A and the E would be.
And it was, almost like a tongue-in-cheek thing that just gained, as you said, people putting shave in their yearbook.
But people, like, they dressed up in uniforms.
Yeah, uniforms.
There were announcements in the morning.
Yes.
They got pretty heated.
We had, at its peak, we had 3 ability levels and 48 teams in one particular season.
I mean, we're talking pretty much the whole school is involved in this, because Seaford's not a huge school to have that many teams.
Sure.
Yeah.
Even if you had the minimum 6 players on all 48 teams, that's almost half the school.
Yeah.
288 or so kids.
Yeah.
And I remember you'd have a meeting before the competition started to go over the rules, and one rule they always, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen rule, because there was always some tempers flaring, and I remember a few fights breaking out.
There were some disagreements, some hearty disagreements, but every time there was one of those, we added a rule, and we would almost name it after the
culprit,
the person who did it. I was just in contact with Mr. Schaub.
Okay, yeah.
He had a team, Schaub Smashers, and once they put in a protest, the protest was denied. I forget the actual issue, but he protested again. So we had to put in a moot Smashers clause. Once the commissioner speaks, any other objections are rendered moot.
And I remember if you spelled commissioner wrong, right away you weren't going to.
You couldn't even speak. You kind of lost all the power.
Not only did you have to spell it right, you had to capitalize it.
Yes.
It had to be capitalized.
I remember you had like a set of class rules up, and like must spell commissioner correctly. Yeah. Was one of those rules that you had.
The commissioner thing actually just came up in my life this past week.
Okay.
My daughter, Judy Ann, is the athletic director at Sacred Heart University. Mm-hmm. She was contacted, and I don't exactly know under what auspices, she was contacted by a local basketball coach who clearly wanted to do something in partnership with Sacred Heart University. And she said, the name Krifcher sounds familiar. It was Brian Krifcher is the name.
Okay.
I remember a Dana Krifcher, but I'm going to ask my father, Mr. the Commissioner Bongiovi. And
there you go.
When he saw that, he said, what a small world. There were 3 Kriftchers, actually.
Okay.
Brian ran for cross-country like basketball around the middle 80s. Eric was older and Dana was a little younger.
Just making sure you have it spelled correctly on the paper here.
I know, yeah.
You do.
Okay.
You do. So good.
Thanks for spell check. But,
yeah.
But anybody who was in Seaford High School at the time Mr. Bongiovi was teaching there knows him as the commissioner. As I guess something that was very well known and highly esteemed position.
I had good faculty support. We always had a second in command, and it always had to do with another C. So Mr. Kutch was the commander-in-chief.
Yes.
Mr. O'Reilly was the chief.
That's right.
The CEO. You had to have something with a C, and Mr. Quick also had a position that started with a C also.
And I always remember when you would announce these games, you always do like these little subtle jabs in there that would always make the crowd laugh or bring some humor to the game as well. So I always enjoyed that. It was always like, what's Mr. Bongiovi you got to say in this game? Because that was kind of a time where it wasn't cool sporting events, so you had a little bit more freedom in how you could announce that.
Sure.
Yeah, I
Yes.
remember specifically championship game where everyone was invited to watch, and someone yelled out, "This game is boring," and you thought, "Because you're not in it." Yeah, so always had something.
Well, as you know, you and as teachers have said plenty of things that you don't remember that your students will remember
exactly,
forever.
yes.
So-
Oh, yeah, I remember. I'll throw up another memory I had of you as a teacher. Something I'll always remember. We had a sub one time, and some students in the class, you know, they don't take your behaviors well for a sub, and somebody at one point had somehow thrown the garbage pail out the window. And I remember you coming in, and the first thing you said, "Well, I got good news for everybody. I got a brand new garbage pail." And so I was just like cracking up. So you always bring like light and humor to the situation. And I never recall anybody having like a behavior issue in your class. So that was something that I always admired about you. Is like,
So one of the things that, and we've talked about this before, because we're teachers now
Okay,
also, is there have been times in my career where I've had some difficult situations or difficult students, and I always say, I wish I could see how Mr. Bongiovi would handle this. I would just love to just sit in the back of the room and see how Mr. Bongiovi just take notes and how he would take care of this situation. And we said that to each other multiple times, but just to...
Well, I think part of it, I mean, if you saw me in my first few years,
that's true. You were a very experienced teacher when we had you.
Nothing, but you know, you build on what you learn. You get more techniques. You have a reputation. So sometimes it's just that you have a good reputation, so that they're not good. But I mean, I can picture any number of times, especially early on in the year. I was very lucky to have all seniors for most of my career, so that. Pot of gold at the end of the rainbow of graduation, especially in an English class, is always.
What is the most important formula you need to know ever in your senior class?
Keep me happy.
Exactly. That was it. That's what we had on the. I had you as a
KMH equals whatever the graduation
The
date was.
yes.
on the board, you had big letters. Can anyone tell me what KMH June, whatever it is, for us it was 1996. So can anyone tell me what this means? And everyone's like, I don't know. And finally you go into, number one rule you have, keep me happy.
Well, I mean, I can picture saying to somebody who's maybe acting out a little bit, I'd say, is it, you know, there's some of your long-term goals. Do you intend to graduate from there? You know, yes, I do. Well, I'd suggest a different strategy.
You're not going about it the best way. Let me point you in a better direction. Awesome.
Let me shift gears from that a little bit.
Sure.
Your brother Tom taught at Seaford High School also. I had him as a social studies teacher.
And we worked in sprinklers with him.
Irrigation, education, irrigation.
Irrigation.
Worked with him. Very hard work, sweated it out a lot of time digging ditches with your brother over the summer, but always appreciated the work, and he was always fun to hang out with. He even actually came some time down to the wrestling room and helped out as well. Someone that as a teacher, kind of if you can, formed a friendship with him, and someone we saw him at the state tournament, the wrestling state tournament, not too long ago. But how was that teaching with your brother in the building? And maybe you could tell us what he's up to these days.
Okay, well...
a lot of people watching had him as a teacher.
Sure. I would say that the number one question I get when I meet people who I haven't seen in a long time is, how's your brother doing?
Okay, good.
You know, so yes, he made an impact as well.
For sure.
But actually, we have to cycle back.
Okay.
Because, first of all, I had him as a student.
I did not know that. Wow.
In your class?
In my class.
Okay.
That must have been awkward.
I've heard of having like a child, your own son or daughter, but not a brother.
It wasn't bad. It was okay. I mean, he didn't try to abuse anything. One famous family story was there was a kind of a breakthrough TV movie called The Day After. It kind of explored some sort of nuclear holocaust.
Okay.
And what would happen. And I mean, the class was humming with a next day discussion over some of the issues, the ramifications, and that sort of thing. And he raised his hand, jumped in with, well, if you think about it, a nuclear holocaust would probably unleash all the animals trapped on Dinosaur Island, and they would come and they would destroy everything anyway. So, end of discussion. The discussion just stopped there. And
that sounds about right.
Yes, my parents. When we planned for open house, when I'm going to talk to, now he was the youngest of 7. My parents weren't coming.
So
to
I was just going to say,
open house
did you
anymore.
have a parent-teacher conference with
No,
your
they weren't.
parents?
They weren't coming anymore. But the realization was, if they came, probably they would yell at me for being tough on him.
Did he do well in your class?
He did well.
Okay.
I think he probably even got an exemption.
Okay.
However, that if that's still an issue that applies these days. He went on. He also went to Lemoyne College. He taught here on Long Island at a couple of schools, Deer Park and Babylon, before coming to Seaford. He married a girl from his college who lived outside Cortland.
Okay.
So
I remember that when
they had a house
before they got
in
married.
Massapequa.
But I remember before he got married, he traveled there and back at a lot of weekends. And he's so he's like.
And then he had the house in Massapequa because occasionally over the summer, while he was away, Dave and I would go and mow his lawn for him in Massapequa by the train station.
Yeah.
He
and she just preferred a different style of life. So they moved to Pennsylvania. He was close to the New York line, so he could use his New York licensing there. He has been superintendent of schools he went to Port Jervis High School.
Yes.
And that's a big wrestling.
Yes, that's some very
famous wrestlers out of Port Jervis.
Excuse me. And he went from a principal to a superintendent. He was superintendent there for any number of years, moved to a different district for superintendency after that, and now he's retired officially from New York State in the New York State retirement system, but he's doing what many Long Island administrators doing and doing interim superintendencies.
Yeah.
So he's been almost employed constantly straight on through, doing very well, he's currently the superintendent of the Orange County BOCES.
Wow, very cool.
And is enjoying it. One of the big responsibilities for that is he doesn't have much to do on the local level because every school district still has its own superintendent, but he goes to Albany to represent Orange County for monthly meetings, so he's making a lot of contacts.
He was always very big into fitness, and he would work out in the workout room at Seaford after school, and he'd allow anyone to go in there, so we used to go in there. And one of the things he said one day is something that I use all the time, repeat to myself often. He said, on the days you don't feel like working out, those are the days you got to work harder. And I specifically remember him saying that, and I repeat that to myself often. I'll sometimes even say it to people on my team. But it's funny the things that stick with you that somebody says that just kind of use for the rest of your life from that.
While we're talking family, I also was teaching at school all 4 years. My 2 daughters went to Seaford High School.
One daughter graduated with my older brother, Eric.
Eric, yes. They're class of 90 and 92.
Yes. Eric was class
and
of
I
92.
would say that as many wonderful things that have happened to me in my long teaching career and all the nice things that came my way, spending those 6 years with them in Seaford High School were like the happiest days of.
That's really cool.
That's really special. Not a lot of people get to have that.
No, yeah. And and they were, they were independently successful, having nothing to do with me. if they had any disadvantage to having a father on the staff, they never communicated it to me. So that was really terrific. Amy, my older daughter, who graduated with Eric, is a school social worker in New Jersey and Seaford High School, and their peer leadership program is what got her kind of headed in that direction. And as we've mentioned, Judy Ann is the athletic director at Sacred Heart.
Wow,
excellent,
very cool.
So, you received a lot of recognition, awards throughout your teaching career. One that stands out is in 2006, you were named the New York State Teacher of the Year. So that had to have been quite an honor. How did that come about, and what is your, as Teacher of the Year, what is that title and involved doing, and
what does that mean to you?
Sure. Well, I mean, it was absolutely career affirming.
Yes.
When it came to more toward the end of my career, I retired 2 years later, but I actually taught probably 2 years beyond when I would have if I hadn't gotten that.
Okay.
Honor.
So that altered your plans a little bit.
Yes, it did, and for the good. It was fine. There, the New York Teacher magazine.
Yes.
That we get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, sometime out of the usual mailing, middle school teacher Dan Hayden,
Yes,
who's a former student of mine,
Yeah.
and was a union leader in the United Teachers of Seaford at the time, approached me on his own and said, "I would want to nominate you for this." And Dan, that's so nice. Thank you very much. That's not for me. So
modest.
He graciously accepted that. I went home, and my much wiser and more visionary wife, when I told her this story, says, "What'd you say?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, the best way you can thank him is to apply."
Yeah.
So, I went through the process, which was a good exercise for self-reflection. They ask you to do a lot of things. Think about what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just do things for rote. Is there a reason why you do what you do in teaching?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Went up. So this would be May of 2005. I went to Albany as a finalist for an interview, and the following Monday they called me and said that I had been chosen, but I couldn't say anything because the announcement wouldn't be made.
That's almost like getting the phone call from the Hall of Fame.
I guess sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of. Wow. So I mean, and that was wonderful. I got to the organization that runs it is the Council of Chief State School Office, CCSSO, and they, in my year, hosted 4 events. All the teachers of the year went to Dallas to meet for the first time, all 50 state teachers of the year in one place at one time. And we got training, we got media training, we got a lot of academic training, people from all grade levels and that all types of schools. As somebody said at that time, it doesn't matter if you are teaching, deep inner city or at the school at the bottom of the hill by the creek, you love your kids and you love what you do. And that was kind of the great equalizer. I have magnificent friendships that still last from that first meeting. Then we met in Washington, D.C. the following April. I spent a week there. Among the events was a visit at the White House, each of us individually interviewed by President Bush.
Yes, that picture's up at Seaford High School, the picture of you with President Bush.
And the third time that we met was in Huntsville, Alabama for Space Camp. And I'm not, we've already established I'm as non-scientific as it gets. But that was magnificent. They really did a great job with that. And then we finally met in Princeton, New Jersey, at SAT headquarters, and did some kind of education of the future sort of things. But after that, speaking engagements and superintendent's conference days.
Yeah,
and
that opened up a lot of doors.
Absolutely, a lot of other contacts. I got on a couple of commissions as a result of that. I got a research job in education after I retired from Seaford. Because of that, I contributed to some education books. So yes, it was very expanding of my educational career.
I remember when you got that award in front of Seaford, it announced that you had won. There's like a sign, and it was just a sign that said, "You make us proud." And that's I think being a member of Seaford, we're so proud to have you representing us. And it was an award for you, but it was really an award for the whole town. It was quite a...
When people at the time would say, thank you for putting Seaford on the map.
Yeah.
And I said, no. Seaford put me on the map. That's how it worked out.
It's quite an honor. Not many people can say that they were a New York State Teacher of the Year.
It's in effect a gift that keeps on giving. We're now 17 years later.
Yeah.
I'm still involved with New York State Ed as a result of it. I am good friends with every Teacher of the Year from 2005, the year before me, my predecessor, until now. I'm friends with all of them.
Wow. It's like a brotherhood, I guess.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
and it's a brotherhood, like you understand things that no one else.
Yeah.
The good and the bad.
Yeah.
It's not everything is not everything was necessarily rosy. I mean, I'm sure Teacher of the Year felt some sort of resentment somewhere along the line. Should have been me, shouldn't have been you. That kind of thing. And but that's in all walks of life.
I think what really goes into that is what people don't see. They see the award, but really the struggle that led up to that, and that's kind of like the culmination of like all the struggle, the hard work, and everything that you put into it. Like people don't see that part; they just see the award, the top of it. So I think that's something you're saying that you have, and when you talk to other Teachers of the Year, they don't see the backstory of that. Yeah, so that's interesting.
You mentioned the struggle building up to that. As part of my application process, I went to Central and got my file, just so I could, kind of remind me of things that I have to include on this application that I don't remember anymore.
Okay.
And one of the things that I discovered in that file was at the end of my first year, they wanted to let me go. And in retrospect of ever many years later, maybe they weren't too far wrong, And I had all the experiences that a first-year struggling teacher had, but that was the principal's recommendation. But the superintendent had a plan. He thought, let's see what we can do to salvage here. So they changed my schedule. I got all the younger classes. Okay. And now, instead of coming in as a new teacher teaching seniors who know the school way better than I do, I'm now a one-year experienced teacher teaching all the sophomores who don't know the school. And they don't know that I'm brand new. And it worked out.
Well, I'm glad that they didn't get rid of you.
It would have altered Seaford's history right there.
And mine.
And yours for sure.
What are some of your closest teaching friends at Seaford High School?
Well, I mean, when I'm the co-president of the Association of Retired Teachers of Seaford Arts, and so I get to see twice a year kind of a lot of former teachers who are still around. Of course, Tom Condon was my age. Was my era. Pat Gallagher was my era. My absolute, and I'm not hurting anyone's feelings by saying that my absolute best friend as a teacher was Mr. D'Onofrio. We are still great friends with his wife Gail. We socialize with her. The English department at the time I was hired was very good. One of the famous names of Seaford High School history is Joe McIntyre, an English teacher, and he was, the Mr. Chips that everybody kind of wanted to be like, and so that was a good role model for me to have, growing up. I mean, Bob Kutch was a great friend through Shave.
Yeah.
Many of the coaches, because I work so closely with them as an announcer, I have great relationships with, most everybody.
And that's pretty cool because I think people watching those names are going to ring a bell to a lot of people. But it's also cool how you kind of tie Seaford's past and present together. A lot of names of the past, but you're still in touch with a lot of teachers and administrators of the present as well.
Well, that's what that's one of the things that I appreciate about being the current public address announcer, that I'm still connected with the school. I still kind of see the growth, the magnificent changes that have happened over, what is it now, 50 some odd years. I try to stay topical without getting in anybody's way. I don't want it to be about me necessarily.
One of the things and I mentioned that I had the honor of being in your class 2 times, is the creativity you always had in your lessons and the different books we read. So are there, and you always were very well read, and so is there some favorite books that you could teach in, or some favorite lessons that stand out?
Well, I remember we did, I remember something that stood out, Catcher in the Rye High. I remember we always did that. And then To Kill a Mockingbird was another one you had. But just on your end, what were some of your favorite books that you taught, or lessons that you did that you could remember?
Well, I always liked the George Bernard Shaw play Pygmalion, because it's such a lesson in so many things, but I could use English language and pronunciation as a part of the lesson. But the Stranger by Albert Camus, where we had the trial of Meursault every year.
I remember doing a trial, yes.
Different students would take on different roles within a courtroom, and we would actually conduct a trial.
And this is before all technology is available, so you come in with actually man-made sets that you'd have. You couldn't just have it up on the smartboard or anything.
No smartboard. No, we would move all the furniture around so that it looks something like a courtroom, and I do remember we had a very rudimentary, whatever sort of camera we might have used at the time, to film it and to send it off to another school so they could, a former teacher at Seaford who had gone to the South, so we could send the trial to her, and her kids could look at it also.
It wasn't just on someone's cell phone, huh?
No, it wasn't on a cell phone. In fact, the first cell phone...
By the way, you don't know the struggles of today's teaching with cell phones in the class.
You never got to experience that.
Thank God. Between the race to the top, the pandemic, and all the technology, I retired at just the right time.
He never taught remotely. Well, exactly. I had students in person and remotely teaching them at the same time. You never had to do that. No,
never had to do that. So, you guys are the real superstars.
But about you, I'm sure you would have done great with it if you had to.
Probably.
So one of the things that I always enjoy when you're announcing and when you're teaching is the vocabulary words and the sayings that you would come up with and use.
Let me throw one out, and maybe you could throw it in. So
all right.
Suppose there's a opposing player in a football game is tackled by several Seaford football players. Do you got something maybe you'd say for that?
Well, I try to have one for each team every game. The standard is vanquished by a vanguard of voracious Vikings.
That's the one I was looking for.
That's
my favorite.
That's
yes.
the standard.
So
but
whenever you say that one, it sends a little chill through me. Like I'm on the sidelines, I'll be doing the change or something, and you say that, I'm like, part of me just like rejoices hearing you say that. Yes.
All right. Yeah. But if there's maybe a pep band on a Friday night is playing, how would you?
Okay. Well, I will. At the first game, they're the Pigskin Pep Band. At the second game, they're the practically professional Pigskin Pep Band, and I keep adding adjectives with a P through however many home games we end up having that year, and end up with about 10
there you go.
P's before Pep Band at the 5th home game of the year.
Instead of saying the concession stand's open, I mean, that's boring.
We want to get something at the concession stand, make it a little bit more exciting. What would you say for that one?
Well, you could take an Epicurean Odyssey. You can go on a culinary cruise.
There you go. Yes.
You can go to the Seaford High School Snack Shack and Football Mall, because Saturday night's all right for biting hot dogs, pretzels, etc.
Awesome. One more about it. There's the trainer is there. What's a way you could maybe just say our trainer is here? What's a little more interesting way you could say that?
Okay. Well, he always knows when it's coming, because I have a standard lead-in. However, Seaford High School, we always appreciate our health personnel, but then when I get to it, I'll finally, say something along the lines of, he is the Thomas Edison of sports medicine, Mr. Mike Spreckles. And I do that at Nassau, and I do that at Farmingdale State.
And I remember
State, they love that.
For wrestling matches, one of my favorites that you use is when the blood sprinkles, we got Spreckles.
We got Spreckles. Right. When the blood flows, that's where he goes.
That's it. Exactly.
Yes,
so those, when you come up with those and you say those during the games, I think all the alumni kind of just give a little smile to each other. So we enjoy that for sure.
Yeah. Fairly recently, on September 28, 2022, just a little bit over a year ago, you were inducted into the Nassau County High School Athletics Hall of Fame. Congratulations on that. I was looking at the program for that, and I want to just read the first line of the write-up for you in that program, because I think this is the way so many other people feel. It reads, "It's the voice. The folks in Seaford can close their eyes and recognize the voice. They've been listening to it for 45 years at football games, soccer games, basketball games, wrestling matches, field hockey games, and lacrosse games." And I think it's the voice, and I think there's something that just hearing that voice that is just brings all the kind of the excitement of living in a small town where it's familiar. That there's just something comforting of hearing that, and there's also, as a coach or as a spectator, it just adds that kind of professionalism to it, kind of like that more excitement to the game. Like it's it's a big game, and Mr. Bongiovi's there announcing, and everybody in the community knows it, and it's just like it's the voice. You were inducted into the Hall of Fame for that voice. So congratulations on that. What was that like?
Thank you. That was a magnificent experience. I've gone to all of the prior inductions. I think they started in 2015. They didn't have one during one of the COVID years, but and it was not something that I aspired to. It was not something that I applied to. So other people had to actually put me up, and then there's a panel that votes on it. So to know that someone thought enough about me to nominate me, someone thought enough about me to get supporting documentation and other letters of recommendation, and then a panel of Section 8 folks, said yes, was very gratifying. The ceremony was wonderful. We had they processed is a better word, all of the inductees into where the stage of the presentation was going to be, to the Chariots of Fire theme, which was really very nice.
Yes, that would
And,
be a
uh,
pretty cool
And
experience.
and I knew any number of my fellow inductees for that particular year just from contacts over the decades. But there was one woman who looked so familiar to me, but I knew her, but it wasn't from there. And when we got out there, they introduced her. Her given name is Laura von Seelen, and she turns out that she's the most decorated athlete in Garden City history, because in addition to, the 3 or 4 sports that she could do for 4 or 5 or 6 years, she was also a swimmer and a diver. So she got letters for that. So she has way more letters than everybody else. But anyway, she's Laura Spencer of Channel 7 News and Flea Market Flip on one of the...
I do watch that show. Okay, yes, very cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So there's all these great athletes there, and you're right in there among them, right?
Yeah, I said yes. Yes, Jim Brown, Julius Irving, Al Order, Steve Bongiovi. 3 of these things belong together. One of them is not like the other. But no, it's really very nice. My category is as a contributor, and I'm only the second public address announcer.
Wow.
Who's in there?
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
So you don't only just announce sporting events, any academic awards or sporting awards, and one of the most well-known things is that you're very involved on the with the 9/11 Memorial Committee. You're a charter member of the Seaford High School 9/11 Memorial Committee. You were a 2005 Honorary Patriot Award recipient, another prestigious award for sure. And every September 11th, Seaford does the best job out of any community in recognizing the 5 alumni that were tragically killed on 9/11. So you are the announcer for that also. So tell us a little about your involvement with the 9/11 committee.
Well, I mean, I would say that in all of my education, maybe even my lifetime experience, the first time the 9/11 SHS 9/11 committee met and started to form and even to kind of maybe come up with some ideas would be the most emotional and
It's interesting. Mr.
really,
Buckley said the same thing when we interviewed
really
him. Yeah.
touching event that I was ever at, and it was really, kind of an informal startup meeting. I mean, because we didn't know what direction we were going to go in. There were, I won't say conflicting interests, because that's not fair, but there were different interests. I mean, the first responder thing is kind of a natural way you picture it, but the families of our businessmen were very concerned that, we don't want to be left behind to be second-class citizens in this sort of thing. And Mr. Condon has got to get just yeoman credit for all that he has done with that. Oh, there are lots of people on the committee, lots of people do things, but, I mean, he does all of it, and with a great deal of expertise.
When you mentioned some of your contemporaries, some of the people that you taught with, they're very involved in that 9/11. Mr. Buckley, Mr. Condon, yourself.
Yes. We were either right at near the culmination of our careers. I mean, Tom, myself, Pat Gallagher. I think we were still teaching there. Ray had probably just retired, not much.
Yeah, because he retired in '97, I believe.
But as you say, the 9/11, you see the people that come out to our 9/11 ceremony.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So many people. I mean, and we haven't let it fade, even though it's 22 years now.
Yes, still going strong, and it will always go strong. So
I think someone said as long as there's a Seaford High School, there will be.
Yes, absolutely.
Correct, right?
Yes.
Maybe that was you that
we
said
agree
that.
with that. We agree with that.
And they do a great job with giving scholarships to students, and the dinner that they do at the end of the year. It's just, like I said before, I don't think any other town, at least on Long Island, does it quite the way Seaford
No,
does.
Mr. Condon did this investigation. We are now in a register. You know, we're kind of we are a registered 9/11 monument organization with the highest ratings within that, and you know, as you say, I mean, every 9/11, in my view, every 9/11 observance or memory is a good one, but some are much smaller, whether it's lack of involvement by volunteers, whether it's kind of quiet and down and fading. Ours, I think, gets more vibrant every year.
It does, for sure.
So many of your former students have gone on to be teachers, Exhibit A and B right here, but many. What advice do you have for someone who's beginning their teaching career? Since you are Teacher of the Year, what advice would you have for a young teacher?
Well, you know, I think we can go back to be sure you like kids more before you worry about a subject area. I mean, you have to have an area of expertise. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But that expertise without a real affinity for being with kids of all levels. I mean, for me, I thought teaching high school was simple in comparison to teaching middle school or elementary. I mean, I've said religiously, and I'll continue to say it, the younger the teacher, the younger the student, the more I respect the teacher for what they, you know, kind of have to put into it. I mean, I know that there are elementary school teachers that say, how do you teach those big kids? You know, they're so scary. No, they're not. You know, graduation is right there, and they need me to get to
That's
it.
it.
So.
There you go. You got something they want.
So that's a definite takeaway for anyone out there. Love your students, care about your students. That's the advice, the message you're sending, right? And that message was sent clear to your students, and you exhibited that all the time.
Yeah, and it's like I said before, it's evident in the relationships you still have with your former students all these years later. Let's finish up this way.
Okay.
What are you up to other than announcing high school and college athletic events? What other interests do you have? You already touched a little bit on your family.
I know you're a Met fan.
I know
We're
you're a
Met
fan,
fans,
a sport
Big
fan.
Met fan.
I know you're still living on Brooklyn Avenue in Seaford, and your wife's involved with the Historical Society.
Yeah, absolutely,
And I know you're involved with that also. So maybe just touch on some of your other interests and your family, and what else?
Well, I have, as I've mentioned, two daughters. My daughter, they both went to Fairfield University, met fine young men there who they married. My elder daughter, Amy, is a social worker in New Jersey, Somerville, New Jersey. That's where she lives. Judy Ann, we've mentioned, is in Trumbull, Connecticut. They each have a boy and a girl. I mean, we're
proud grandpa.
We are 4-time grandparents.
Nice.
And enjoying that very much.
How old's the oldest one?
Our oldest one's a junior at Springfield College.
Wow.
His sister is a freshman at Loyola College in Baltimore.
Okay.
My Connecticut grandchildren, he's a freshman at Villanova, and his sister is a sophomore at Trumbull High School.
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
So I would say that being grandpa, they call me Pa, is my best job so far now. But we both decided, my wife and I decided, Judy and I kind of came up with, when we retire, we'll still have our own interests, but let's pick something that neither of us were in that we can do together. And that was the Seaford Historical Society. She's now the president of the Historical Society. I am the secretary, the corresponding secretary there. We do that. She is involved with St. William's Bereavement Bereavement Ministry.
Okay.
Very emotional, but very important sort of thing. We both have my wife and I both have large families, large extended families. So there's lots of relatives and other family events, and that sort of thing. I mean, officially, I am on the scholarship committee of the National Council of State Teachers of the Year. I'm on the selection committee for the New York State Teacher of the Year still, as far as being involved in educational items. But with so many games a year, I can't travel too far for too long. I'll miss something or another.
So it sounds like you keep busy.
Yes, but we love our schedule. It's just
Good for you.
it's been managed well for us. There's no early morning games. Wake up and the earliest have to be prepared for is a football game on a Saturday. But other than that, most games are later. So yes.
Good for you. Sounds great.
So and maybe one of these days the Mets will win a World Series again.
Maybe. Well,
long-suffering Met fan.
Maybe a Met tonight, a former Met tonight.
Yeah, sure.
Get to the World Series. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that.
I can't see that going well. It's probably going on right now. I don't see it.
By the time this is viewed, we'll know.
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Let's see how's.
So right now what is being recorded is Game 7 of the ALCS. And
they're winning 4-2, so you're doing all right.
All right. Okay. All right. Yes, Met fan.
What's your favorite college football? I know you follow college football.
Notre Dame is my favorite college football.
Do you have a favorite
big
NFL
fan.
team?
I'm a Jet fan as well, so there's lots of suffering in my sports fandom.
Yes.
No doubt about it.
Yes.
So
it makes winning that much more rewarding.
Is there anything else you would like to say to people watching, or anything?
Well, I want to thank you two guys for honoring me by including me in this series. But Seaford's a magnificent place to live, a magnificent place to work, and it's the people who make it that way. I mean, we are not so unsophisticated that we can't enjoy small town values while still enjoying the benefits of 21st century living. But I have been blessed for my entire professional career and have Seaford to thank for it, and former students like these two.
Thank you. Well, I think I can speak on behalf of the many viewers and former students. Thank you for being a big part of why Seaford is such a special place to live, and a place that I grew up in, and now I'm happy to raise my family in as well. So it's an honor to be able to speak to you as a former student, and now just continuing that relationship is always a pleasure. You can still hear the voice at many of Seaford's home events. So
Seaford girls soccer tomorrow.
There you go.
There's the next time.
Playoffs.
If you want to stop in and catch up with Mr. Bongiovi, come on out to a Seaford home event, and there's a good chance you'll see him and hear that comforting, familiar voice that has been doing Seaford sports for over 40 years now. So again, thank you for being with us, and
thank you so much. Thank you very much.
God bless.
Enjoyed it very much.
All right, God bless. So thank you for watching. Take care, everyone.